discussing a presentation by Yuke Zhu. He's now professor at University of Texas, Austin. He's also at GEAR, which is a lab at NVIDIA, which works for which tries to proliferate foundation models for embodied agents. I think Yuke is really interesting. His work, his publications, his research pretty much aligns with our views on robotics, and that is foundation models, reinforcement learning based solutions to complex real world interactions. So he's very much in that world. He also works with world models. His PhD is from Stanford under Fei-Fei Li. Fei-Fei Li now has a company which is trying to build a world model. So clearly he's in that academic sort of in that academic family. And I think, just as a side note, I can highly recommend for people who work in this space, like we here at Orange Capital Partners, which is we try to bridge science, technology, and entrepreneurship. So we try to find the Venn diagram overlap where scientific innovations turn into technologies and eventually can be commercialized. So it's always interesting. You obviously have to follow science, but it's more important to understand who to follow, particularly in AI and robotics. There's thousands of people that all claim to have good progress, and it's hard to say if they do or not. Often the titles of the papers all kind of sound gibberish to most people, and it is actually most of the time gibberish, but sometimes it's not. And I think this is a good example of a person that is worth following. His roots are with computer vision, but it's translating from vision into action, which is, again, it's the academic sort of inheritance that he takes from Fei-Fei Li and her group, and is now bringing to bear at NVIDIA. So his main contribution, I have a couple of papers in the show notes. I also have a presentation he gave at Carnegie Mellon. I think the main contribution goes back to his PhD, and that is a hierarchical decomposition of robot actions. In his PhD, he decomposes robot actions into 3 levels. One is vision action, that is the basic I see, I act. Then there's a mid-level where it's planning, but it's kind of planning like, the apple needs to go to the refrigerator and I have an obstacle and I don't see the refrigerator. How could I potentially get there? And the third level is sort of the highest level, that is the semantic level. Keep my apartment clean, make sure my car gets to its destination on time with the most comfort for and safest way for its passengers. So those are high-level semantic ideas that then get translated into the lower levels and always go back to the lowest level, which is pixel to action. So it's like a human. I mean, you can have take a human example. Human biology, human intelligence works very similar. My goal is to have an impact on the world. The mission of Orange Capital Partners is to generate wealth by investing in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices. So this is our high-level goal. But we have to act on a daily basis. We have to decide, what are we doing with our portfolio? Are we buying or selling? So there's a certain low-level action, vision, or perception action mechanism that we have to learn as fund managers. But we also have to keep the big picture. And sometimes we have this intermediate, maybe there's a crisis and we don't see around the corner, stocks are falling and we don't understand why, and we have to navigate. So it's very similar, actually. I think that's what I like about Zhu's work. It's really driven by this idea of decomposition. So in one of his papers, for example, learning from video data, you look at the video, you dissect the video into semantic subgoals. So, this is one of the problems that Tesla's working on for Optimus, right? How can we learn from video? And I'm pretty sure they're highly influenced by Zhu's work. It is, again, we have this, let's say a barista making coffee. That is the sequence. The robot learns, okay, there is coffee being made in this video, but how do we dissect the lower level pixel to action? Well, you grab the coffee machine, you pour the coffee in, you dissect the video into subgoals, and then you learn how to act based on those subgoals, and that becomes compositional, and that's really powerful. So you can then learn, if you learn how to pour water into a cup, you can use that for coffee making, you can use that for serving tea, you can use that for all kinds of things. Another idea, DreamGen Paper, the question here is, how can we use video generation, Gen AI, to learn actions? This is the inverse of learning from video. This is generating synthetic data with video, and because you're generating the data now, you can also immediately generate the video, the vision action pairs. And what they do here is, it's actually pretty interesting. The paper's called DreamGen, introduced this concept of digital cousin. I don't know if it's in this paper, but in the presentation at Carnegie Mellon, Zhu talks about the digital cousin, which is a concept, I think, out of Stanford. So the digital twin would be the exact copy of a factory, and then you in virtu produce something, and then you can actually see whether that relates to what you want, and then build the same exact factory in the real world. The digital twin is a little bit different. What you do in the digital twin is you film a certain action. For example, I'm folding a towel, and now you're creating lots of trajectories of towel folding with different sizes, different lightings, all kinds of stuff, and have the robot learn from its digital cousin. So it's not exactly the same, but it's kind of similar. One of the more interesting papers, though, that I want to discuss, this is obviously the key problem. It's the dexterity problem, and in this paper they talk about the dexterity problem. They decompose the dexterity problem into a multiple of waypoint contact problems, right? So if you grab a cup, that is the way the authors solve it in this problem, is they define fingers, hand, waypoints, so points on the finger, points on the cup, and relationships, and then train via reinforcement learning in simulation how that should work, and then translate into reality. I think what I found powerful here is, again, this decomposition, high level, grab the cup, put it in the fridge, or grab the cup and pour some water and drink, or give it to somebody. You're not going to drink it if you're a robot, hopefully. And the decomposition into waypoints, that's so you want to preserve the relationship between the fingers, the hand, and the cup. You want to keep the symmetry, so the cup should always have a certain angle towards the fingers and the hand, and therefore you can generalize, again, grabbing a cup, grabbing a pencil, grabbing a phone. What doesn't really matter whether it's a cup or not, as long as the waypoints and the relationship are the same. You can also use attention here, transformer technology, to manipulate. So I think the reason I want to mention Yuke Zhu is because this is a very good example of a person that is really working on the kinds of problems that we care about most here at Orange Capital Partners. And with our investments in NVIDIA and Tesla, we're exposed to it. I guess my final point, I just want to reiterate one of the biggest, I think, ideas that we have this year, which is finally we have a use case for Optimus that we think can be commercialized at scale, and that is data center AI, space data centers, AI, space data centers. I don't know what the word is yet. I'm sure Silicon Valley or somebody will come up with it. So to build gigantic data centers in space, you need robots. Robots will build those things. They will maintain those things. You want to put a 2.53 square kilometer solar array in space. You have to modularize the launch and then weld it or do something with it up there, and that's going to be Optimus. So I think there's two big advantages to having a use case like that. One is that we can now train effectively on on a pretty clearly defined, still general task space, but it's not super wide and therefore difficult to benchmark. So we have a benchmark now. We have a goal. Optimus needs to be able to help us build AI data centers in space. The other big advantage is this is, in our opinion, a commercially viable technology. And remember, in the beginning, we said Venn diagram overlap between technology, science, and entrepreneurship. And this is one of those. Like, there's money to be made. We believe that the demand for intelligence is insatiable. It's like demand for, for transportation, demand for vanity, vanity satisfaction, or there's certain things humans always want more of. Back to Bezos's famous idea in his early shareholder letters, I can't predict the future, but how about we try to stick with what's certainly not going to change? Lower price, higher quality, more selection, better safety, things like that. People will always want lower price because it frees resources, and that's just the laws of physics. We want to have a lower price. We want to have more convenience. We want to have more safety, which is related to convenience. And also, we want more, we want to satisfy our vanity and our sort of look better than the neighbor kind of desire. So those things will always be there. And the AI data centers solve a few of those problems. Fundamentally, they give us compute at scale, at unprecedented scale. They solve two fundamental problems, which is the NIMBY problem, which I think is a much bigger problem than we actually admit. The reason China is so much ahead of us in energy installation is because of the NIMBY problem. It's not because of technology. And the other, of course, is the price. China's paying a huge price with pollution and also risk in terms of nuclear power. We don't want to pay that risk, which is related to the NIMBY problem, but we can solve all of these problems by going to space. We have abundant solar energy up there. We don't have the NIMBY problem yet, and it's going to take a while until we have it, so that's fine. We can solve the cooling problem, so it's not just the energy problem that is required to power the chips, but also the energy problem. And I think, given all this, we're incredibly positive on Tesla now. In fact, Tesla is becoming sort of related to SpaceX, and the SpaceX IPO is in everybody's ears right now. And for us, there will be a question eventually whether we should buy SpaceX, and we're probably not going to do that. We're going to just stay with Tesla, because Tesla could be a big winner in this race for space AI that SpaceX, of course, will be driving with Starship, but Tesla could be delivering some of the fundamental components that are necessary to make that happen. And one is work through Optimus. The other, of course, is the chip side of things, that's relatively open. It's not clear where Tesla stands there, but we could see a convergence of AI training and AI inference in space through the next generations of Tesla chip technology. So again, to summarize, now I digressed a little bit, but I just wanted to use this episode to really bring 2 points across. One is the importance of science, and I think Yuke Zhu is a very good example of a scientist that has his feet deep on the ground, working on real problems that we care about as investors. He's at NVIDIA at the Gear Lab, but he's also a professor. So it's a very good example of how science can translate into real, tangible, useful things. He's working on the fundamental problem of embodied intelligence and the generalization of embodied intelligence. And his solution is the decomposition of tasks into low-level vision action and then high-level planning. So we discussed that, and then we also sort of digressed a little bit into the very, very important finding that we believe that Optimus now has a real-world, commercializable, at-scale, wealth-generating opportunity, and that is to help build data centers in space. Thank you.